Hello and welcome. I'm Amy Veltman, class of 1989, and president of the Alumni Association of Barnard College, the AABC, as well as an alumni trustee. Whether you are joining us in person or on Zoom, we are so happy that you're here tonight. As a reminder for those joining us on Zoom, you will not have a microphone or camera access during this online event. Zoom attendees' voices, likenesses, and/or images will not be captured by Barnard College, and written submission of questions may be shared during the Q&A portion of the event. Tonight's event would not be possible without the efforts of the dedicated Barnard trustees, Caroline Bliss Spencer, class of 2009, and Amy Crate, class of 1994, and a parent of a child of 24 and 27. Caroline, Amy, thank you for putting this together. Caroline joined the Barnard College Board of Trustees in 2016. She currently chairs the Budget and Finance Committee for the college, serves on the Investment Committee, the Development Committee, and has co-chaired the annual gala since 2019. In her professional life, Caroline is an investment advisor at Goldman Sachs, where she leads a senior team working with ultra-high net worth individuals, families, and select institutions, including foundations and endowments. Caroline graduated with distinction from Barnard in 2009. She currently lives in New York City with her husband, Tom, and their daughter, Eliza, who is a 2021 graduate of the Barnard Toddler Center. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Caroline Bliss Spencer.
Wow, look at all of you. Thank you, Amy, and hello, everyone. I am so excited all of you are here tonight, and I'm so excited to welcome my dear, dear friend, Lydia Fenet, to the Barnard family. Lydia is many things: best-selling author, Christie's ambassador, rock star charity auctioneer, mom of 3, an incredible mentor and friend to many. She will also be joining us on April 24th as the auctioneer at the Barnard College Annual Gala, and I hope all of you will be there as well. Had to get my gala plug in. Lydia's first book, The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You, includes a chapter introduction from our very own President Bylock, along with a few notable Barnard alums, and is the basis for the upcoming Netflix series, Sold. Yesterday, Lydia launched her newest book, Claim Your Confidence, a powerhouse guide to overcoming your fear and finding the confidence within. This is a book all of us needs, and I am so happy Lydia is here with us tonight. When I was a Barnard sophomore, still finding my own way in New York, finalizing the decision to be an art history major, imagining where my life would go, I had the privilege of being offered an internship at Christie's. I returned early from winter break, eager to start, and on a very cold January day, I walked into their Rockefeller Center offices, was introduced to my boss, a gorgeous, 6-foot-tall, 27-year-old woman from Louisiana named Lydia Fenet. The rest is history. Lydia's intern is still one of my absolute favorite identities. And while our professional paths diverged a long time ago, the lessons I learned and her never-ending encouragement to keep pushing myself is one of the reasons I am where I am today. Having Lydia here tonight at Barnard, an institution that truly changed my life in more ways than I could describe, means more to me than I could express. And I know for sure that in about an hour, you are all going to love Lydia as much as I do. So please join me in welcoming Lydia Fenet.
Well, first and foremost, you should all know that while Caroline was my intern, I was in no way the boss in that situation. The minute Caroline arrived from Barnard College, I was like, where is this college and what kind of women are they producing? Because if Caroline is the epitome of Barnard, then you are doing the right thing. So I'm going to start my speech the way I start every time I'm on stage. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lydia Fenet. I will not be using the podium because I'm a charity auctioneer and I need a stage to move around. So here is what is going to happen. I'm going to speak for about 30 minutes. Listen however you want. If you need to take notes on your phone, if you want to look at Instagram, it doesn't bother me. I'm a charity auctioneer. No one ever listens or pays attention when I get on stage. So I want you to listen the way that you listen best. And I'm comfortable speaking to heads. I'm comfortable speaking to eyes, any way you want to listen. And those of us joining on Zoom, take a walk, take a breath. If you walk away from this speech with one thing tonight, then I will feel great about the fact that you were here. I like to say many different things over the course of my life, but one thing that I love to say in particular is about storytelling. I grew up in Louisiana, and in Louisiana, we always tell everything through stories. So have you ever heard a story that sticks with you like glue? That's a question, so feel free to nod. Something that no matter what happens, it comes back to you time and time again. It bubbles up over time, and you don't know why you heard it at that moment, but over the course of days or weeks or even years, it comes back to you. This happened to me a couple of years ago with a story that one of my friends told. It was about running, which was hilarious because honestly, I've never seen her run anywhere in my life unless there's like a sample sale in the middle of Manhattan and then she's taking off like nothing you've ever seen. But in this case, that was a joke. In this case, she told a story about ultramarathoners that she read, and it completely blew her away. And the story was about how ultramarathoners run in packs. And as they run in packs, 50, 60, 70, 100 miles, one of them will get tired. And they'll be like, I can't go anymore. Like, basta, we're done. And everyone will look around and say to that person, you are fine. And they will repeat it again, you are fine. You are fine, until the person starts to repeat it back to them. I am fine. I am fine. And at some point, mentally, it takes over. And their body gets back in line with their mind, and they keep going. Now, this story appealed to me on so many levels because I truly believe that as individuals, we have the ability to control everything we do in our lives if our mind is strong enough. But there was also another part that really appealed to me, and that was the community aspect of this, because there's something about a community of people rising up together to make something happen that's such an unbelievable thing to witness. Now, I know this because I'm a charity auctioneer, as I've said 9 times since I got on stage tonight. So do you guys know what a charity auctioneer is? Some of you do, some of you don't. Well, I did not know what a charity auctioneer was when I was in college, like many of you here. And I was studying abroad in college, and I ran across an article in Vanity Fair magazine about a charity auction in New York City at a place called Christie's Auction House. And I was 19 years old, and I remember reading the story. It was Princess Diana's dresses were all being sold to benefit this charity. And I became completely obsessed with this world of auctioneering. I grew up in a small town in Louisiana. My parents were not art collectors. I didn't even know that art could be traded. In fact, I didn't even really like to go to museums unless there was a cafe attached, which when I was growing up there wasn't, but now there are, and that's awesome. But at the time, I remember thinking to myself, I have to work there. And I did what I always do, and I would advise you to do this in anything you want in your life. I started talking about it. I told every single person that I had ever seen, ever met, ever came across that I was going to work at a place called Christie's Auction House. And most of them said, where and what? Including my parents. But my dad is like me, never met a stranger. His catchphrase, network or die, has kept me going throughout my life. Not that you're going to die if you don't network, but that your business surely will. So get out there and meet everyone you can, because everyone you meet knows something and someone you do not. Network or die. So anyway, my dad, at a party, 6-8 months later, ran across a woman who, guess what, had just started working at Christie's Auction House in New York City. And even better, she knew the woman who was the internship coordinator. Now, I didn't know anything about internships growing up in Louisiana. This was not my world. So I called Christie's Auction House, and you guys probably all thought we were the same age, but I am not in college. And I know, it's shocking. You guys do look shocked. But I definitely did not realize that internships were things that were secured months in advance. So I called Chrissy's auction house in April and I announced that I would like to be an intern. And I was laughed off the phone by the internship coordinator. She was like, honey, the internship program's been full since January. Like you're not coming to work here. And I was like, that's what you think, because we haven't met yet and you don't know that I never take no for an answer. And so for the next 2 weeks, I called her every single day. And by the way, caller ID was not invented then. It's invented now. So she didn't know who she was picking up the phone to until she heard my Southern accent. And I would say, Miss Libby, it's Lydia Fenet. I was just calling to see if maybe there was a chance I could intern. Finally, the last day, she was about to hang up. I was like, can I just ask you a question? The internship program is free. So why is there a limit? And she said, because the museums can only accept 30 people for tours. So 2 groups of 15 go. We can't have more than 30. And I said, well, I don't have to go to the museums, as we've discussed. I don't have to go to the museums. I'll just stay behind, and everyone's going to need someone to work in the afternoon. And she finally did not say no. She didn't say yes, but she called back an hour later. I was allowed to do a modified internship where I could not attend any of the museum field trips unless people didn't go. Well, guess what? There are a lot of really irresponsible people who do not understand, like Caroline Bliss Spencer did, the importance of an internship and who don't show up. And I went on every single museum tour. And then you don't even have to applaud. I'm going to be up for hours. But the thing is, and the interesting thing was that I got in there and I never wanted to leave. And I did everything that nobody else wanted to do. And I didn't care because I was so excited to be there. I shredded paper that was taller than me. It takes a long time. Also, don't get the staples in there. It'll jam that machine. But over time, I got in there. I was eventually hired to work in the company. And about 4 years in, I noticed something really amazing. There was this thing called charity auctioneering that I'd read about in Vanity Fair. And there were going to be tryouts. And for the first time, they were going to open it up to the entire company instead of just having the officers in the company do it. And so I was allowed to try out at the age of 24 years old. And I went to that tryout, which actually does not look dissimilar to this. 20 people sitting in a chair, and over time you get eliminated, 3 to 4 days, just like Survivor. Every single day, less people, less people. First day, my boss got cut. Second day, my boss's boss got cut. Third day, I was still there. And day 4, I was in. I was 100% in. I was a new auctioneer. I was 10 years younger. I was the only woman, and they did not know what to do with me. And so they said, and I quote, "We don't know what to do with you, so we'll just send you to the auctions that nobody else wants to take." But remember, I grew up in Louisiana. I didn't know anyone in New York, and I was 24 years old. I had nothing but time at night. And out I went on stage, 50, 60, 70 nights after work. I'd leave work at 8. I'd go hit a stage somewhere in Manhattan every single night. Was I good? I was not. I was very mediocre as an auctioneer. And you guys are sitting so quietly, which is nice, but this is not what my reality is. I'm used to being in audiences with hundreds of people who are drinking heavily and doing their best to talk over me and completely ignore me time and time and time again. And it's really soul crushing. And so what I learned about 8 years into this was a lesson that I would like to impart to you tonight. You have to learn to sell as yourself. And I learned that because remember what I said when I was trying out? I passed with 10 people who were 10 years older than me, almost all men. That's because that's what the auctioneering world looked like at that point. If you were to imagine an auctioneer, if you knew anything about it, it was always a British man, probably in his 50s with a black tie. And so I got up on stage as a charity auctioneer wearing a black suit and affected a British accent. And it did not work. People ignored me all the time. The other thing they also did was they ignored me because I wasn't being entertaining. I was standing on stage spouting numbers the way that I would if you were seated quietly trying to buy a really expensive piece of art, because that's what happens at Christie's. But what did I say? That's not what charity auctioneering is, right? So I learned one night when I stood on top of the stage in front of a room like this, desperately sick. I'd been sick all day. I got on stage and I started to start the auction the way I would have, in my very formal voice, my very black suit. And I said, lot number 1, ladies and gentlemen, is a cocktail reception and a dinner at the home of Jennifer. I can't tell you her last name because she's a VIP client of Christie's. And I looked down, and the woman who I was about to sell the lot for had been seated next to me 5 years prior when the man I thought I was going to marry dumped me. I was in charge of, I know everyone was like, oh, I know, it's okay, I'm married, you guys, it all worked out. But I literally had been seated next to her at the dinner. I mean, at lunch the next day. He'd broken up with me that night. We went to lunch the next day. I cried the entire lunch. I was in charge of the lunch. I was the head of events, and I cried to our top client the whole time. She could not have been nicer. She nursed me back to health over the entire time. And I remember looking down at her and thinking, I should tell the audience that, because maybe that would make them laugh and then they wouldn't look so bored and they would stop talking. And so I did exactly that. I said to the audience, ladies and gentlemen, lot number 1 is a dinner at the home of Jennifer. And I have no doubt you're going to have a wonderful time because she has an amazing art collection. But most importantly, I sat next to Jennifer when the man I thought I was going to marry dumped me. She nursed me back she nursed me back to health over the course of one lunch. So if you are currently seeing a therapist, save your money, give it to the charity, and go hang out with Jennifer. And I'll tell you something that's really interesting. When you start to sell as yourself, you'll notice something immediate. People start to relate, and they're drawn to you, and they start to engage. And I realized that that was the key to something. Selling as yourself, being yourself, showing up as yourself is the most important lesson you will learn over the course of your life. You cannot come and do something in someone else's voice. It will never feel real and will never feel authentic to you. And if you are selling anything, whether that be a product over time, something you've created, or you as yourself, be yourself. And that is what I learned. I'm standing on stage in the yellowest dress that many of you have ever seen in your life. Have you ever seen anyone wear such a yellow dress? Probably not. This is how I take auctions. Those black suits, I shed them like skin over the years. And instead, I replace them with color in heels and earrings because that's who I am. And that's when I get on stage, what I want people to see, because it's fun and funny. And that's my style. I don't scream any numbers at you. It's the last thing I do. I talk to the people in the audience. I make eye contact with them. We have a great time. Sell as yourself. That story was for me such an important part of my journey in learning to move things forward. And I found over time, as I walked around telling this story, and The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You with my first book on book tour, that I would tell this story amongst many others. And it was interesting because the Q&A is always my favorite part, and we're going to have a robust Q&A at the end of this. The Q&A is always my favorite part of this because I start getting so many questions. So sell as yourself. Why did you start with a gavel? I start with a gavel because I want your attention. I want you to know that I'm serious, that my intention is to get your attention and to keep your attention tonight, that this speech is going to be different. I sell as myself because I want you guys to listen and pay attention. And I would get up on these stages for that book tour, and I started hearing this question. How are you so confident? Where did you get your confidence? And just like with The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You, which I wrote because there was always a woman standing stage right, waiting to tell me how she hated selling things, I wrote The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You to address that question. I started hearing the same thing about confidence. So this is 2019, touring this book. 2020 hits. And then it was like a deluge. In my inbox, DMs, Instagram, anytime I did a virtual talk, how do I become more confident? I used to be confident. I lost my job. I'm in school, but school's been closed and I'm at home. Where do I get my, I see you nodding. Where do I get my confidence? No, it's okay to nod. I like it actually. It means I'm saying the right thing. But my point is that confidence became that drumbeat. And as a writer, you start writing to that. How do you become more confident? How did I become more confident? I learned it on stage. I learned it on stage because I wasn't good at the beginning. It was really painful to get on this stage night after night and have people talking over me, but I kept doing it because I knew that I would get better if I wasn't scared. One of the first auctions that I took, I walked in, standing stage right with the woman who was in charge of the entire thing. I was so excited to be there. I showed up, I was like, this was gonna be the best auction I'd ever taken in my life. And I stood next to her and I said, I'm ready. Let me on the stage. She's like, okay, well, before we get on the stage, we just have to round up the 350 people who are not seated in the seats right now. I was like, yeah, go ahead and do that. She's like, well, do you want to just stand on stage and make an announcement? I was like, yeah, can I have the microphone? And she said, oh, we don't have a microphone. We just thought you would stand up there and do your thing. It's like, what thing do I have that's going to overcome 350 people who are chugging tequila at the bar that I'm watching and bring them to sit down? And she was like, oh, I don't know, sorry. And the most humiliating night of my life in my 20s was standing on that stage for a 17 lot auction, which takes an hour and a half. By the end, there were 3 people seated and they didn't bid on the last lot. And I went running home and I cried and cried and cried to my roommate. And then I was like, I'm never doing that again. I'm never getting on stage. It was so embarrassing. And a week later, somebody reached out and said, can you take my auction? I can't do that. I've got to go to Houston. Can you take my auction for me? And I didn't respond for days. And then I thought, well, maybe I should just try it again. And I got back on that stage and that auction was fine. And about 6 months later, I was at an event and the microphone kept cutting in and out. And I remember thinking, well, that wasn't as bad as the time I didn't have the microphone, right? Because I got back up and I tried it again. Over the course of my career, I've been on stage 9 times where there was no microphone. Like microphone cut out, microphone didn't work. Now I don't even think anything about it. And people often believe that that is something that is about confidence. Confidence is learned over the course of your life in these small increments where you push yourselves out of the box that you're living in and you realize that you are capable of more than you ever thought possible. So many of you are in college right now. You're at the beginning of your life, of your career as an adult. You have the opportunity to get comfortable getting uncomfortable, to try the things that you don't think you can do and prove to yourself that you can. That is where confidence comes from. You guys will get this orange book. It is magnificent, by the way. Sell it to all your friends, take social posts of it. I'm a salesperson. I have to sell my own book, so do that for me. Thank you. My point in telling you that is when you open that book, the first chapter of the book is about the book tour for The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You. I'd come out of 2 weeks in New York. Everything had been planned. I'd had more fun than I'd ever had in my life. This was the biggest moment of my career. Writing a book takes a lot of work. It is worth it. If you have that desire, do it. It's the most amazing experience to watch it come to life and then fly. I flew out to San Francisco after 2 weeks in New York. I was riding high. I was going to my first book event in San Francisco, full hair and makeup, ready to go. Uber was running late. It's taking a while. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna miss this. But flying into the place where the event was taking place, exact setup, all these chairs. There was one person seated in the front row. And by the way, this was a moderated talk. So there was another guy who was gonna be interviewing me, and that was very embarrassing. Over the course of the next 20 minutes, I tried to recruit people from the bookstore. I asked one woman in particular, I was like, I'm doing a book talk for my new book, The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You. Would you like to come? She was like, no. I was like, oh, that really felt horrible. Wow, that really stung. And then it went down from there. My sister's best friend then walked in. So then I had a witness for my whole family to know that there was only one person at my book tour, which was actually the worst because my sister is the person who makes fun of me more than anyone in life. And so then it just continued getting worse and worse. And the final moment was there was a woman who she pulled in a shopping cart. I assume she was homeless based on that, into the back of the room and then proceeded to heckle me the entire time. Yeah. And I start the book off by saying, people think when you're successful, when you stand up here in a bright yellow dress with a book with your name on it, that you have it all, right? That's what Instagram shows us. It's so glossy, you have it all. But that is where confidence comes. That is where you learn to be confident. When you have put yourself out there, when you are in hair and makeup, and everyone in San Francisco that you know knows you are at a bookstore and no one comes except for your sister's best friend, a person, and another person who just heckles you the whole time. That is where confidence comes from. So understand that if you are willing to put yourself out there, there will be moments like that. And it will feel horrible, but you will get through it. And because of that, you will be willing to push yourself further. The last thing that I want to point out in my book is about the power of positivity, which I am a firm believer of in many different ways. Over the course of my life, I've always been a positive person, but I think more than ever, over the past couple of years, we've all had to push through so many things that it's exhausting to be positive. People don't want to be positive, and I get that. But I will also tell you, as someone who has been relentlessly positive my whole life, it has served me better in situations than you can ever imagine. So I had finished 11 chapters of this book on Halloween of 2021. I was so excited. I was almost done. It was due in December. And we have 3 small children. We'd taken them outside of the city to try to avoid the chaos of New York City, visiting where my husband grew up. And loaded them into the car, not really thinking anything of it. It was another night. And as we were driving back, I remember thinking to myself, oh, the kids have finally stopped yelling about the Halloween candy as I turned on a podcast for them to listen to. And that is the last thing I remember before the world went black. I woke up, if you can imagine your worst nightmare, I was living my worst nightmare. The entire car in front of me was spider webs. My husband was in the left seat, slumped, not moving. And my 3 children were in the back screaming my name over and over and over again at the top of their lungs. As you can imagine, if you look at me, you would never think something like that would have happened to me, right? And that's what I thought as I sat in that chair. This isn't my life. I couldn't breathe. My body was completely numb. And everything in me was in shock. My kids were still screaming. I couldn't even say, I'm okay, are you okay? Because I couldn't breathe. My husband was still out. I didn't know if he was alive or dead. Over the next couple of minutes, he stirred, and I barely whispered, oh my God, what happened? What happened? And he said, a car was flying through the air. And he wasn't wrong. A car coming in the other direction had lost control, flipped the guardrail, and come down directly in front of our car. We were going almost 70 miles an hour. It was the equivalent of hitting a brick wall. My husband was able to get out of the car and go around, touch each of our children. I could tell from the way that he was holding his arm that his arm was probably shattered, which it turned out that it was. Luckily, our children were, for the most part, okay, with broken bones as he took them out. He knew that they were alive. And he came around to my side to get me, and I couldn't move. My entire left eye was blind at that point. There was nothing I could see out of my left eye. It was like a kaleidoscope. My body would not move. I've been a long distance runner my whole life. So the thought of losing any movement in my body was crazy. He left me in the car, took the children out. Someone else had pulled behind us to take the children into the car. And I sat in that seat. And remember what I said earlier about confidence and how you have these small things over the course of your life that build you and take you to where you are. Even as I sat in that passenger seat at that moment, I knew that I would be okay as long as I lived. I literally mentally went there. Am I blind in my left eye? Maybe. Am I paralyzed? Maybe. But I'll be okay. I know that I will be okay. The ambulance came to take me out of the car. They cut me out of the car and put me into the ambulance and took me to the hospital. And if you've ever watched ER, you know exactly what happens. They pull you out. The whole time I'm like, this really is not my life. Like, what is going on? They pulled me into the hospital, into the ER, and words that I had never imagined could be used about me were being used. MRI, CAT scan, death, internal bleeding, death. So many things going on around me. And I was looking up at the doctors as they're saying all of this. And I remember thinking to myself, you guys don't know how cool I am. Like, I am the coolest person you've ever met. And you guys are talking about me like I am not here, but I am going to be fine because I am strong and I am confident in who I am. And I have been like that because I have made myself like that over the course of my life. They wheeled me out of that room into another room. I was not prepared for what came next. My children were on stretchers, my husband on a stretcher. They laid the 5 of us out on gurneys. It was like a funeral in many ways. They kept moving my children around so that I could hold their hands because they were crying. My 4-year-old had broken her arm. My oldest had bone bruising so bad she couldn't walk, and my little one had literally sliced his neck. My husband had shattered his left wrist. I'd fractured my spine, broken 7 ribs. Luckily, I was not blind in my left eye. It was simply something that had been split from my forehead. that I was going to be able to see. Small win, the power of positivity. As my in-laws and sister came into the room, I looked around and I realized everyone was falling apart. They were sobbing, my children were sobbing, my husband was groaning in pain, my in-laws were sobbing, my sister was sobbing, and that story of the ultramarathoners came rushing back to me. My voice went up 2 octaves. I looked at my children, I looked at my husband. We are the strongest family in the world. I know that was scary, but we are going to be fine. We are fine. We are together, we are alive, and we are going to be fine. The entire mood of that room lifted. My children's faces lifted. We are fine. You are fine. Objectively, I was not fine. I was going in from an internal surgery. They thought I was bleeding to death. I was only going to be in there for another 5 hours until the entire thing knew that we were going to be fine, and I knew that I was going to be fine. But I knew if I lived, I would be fine, and I knew my children needed me to be fine in that moment. I came out of surgery hours later. It's amazing you have no idea how much pain you can be in your body and still be alive. It's crazy. I didn't have the ability to do anything. I wasn't having a fusion in my spine for another 5 days. Remember what I talked about with community? The community of people? Our family and our friends rose up around us like you could never imagine. In tragedy, there's so much beauty, and that's what I saw over the weeks, months that came. We are fine. You are fine. I repeated it through the surgery. I repeated it in the mirror. And ultimately, I was fine. It wasn't that it was easy. It wasn't that recovery was easy. It wasn't easy to handle what my children went through in the year that passed. But we were okay, as long as we believed it and we were confident in ourselves. I tell you this story because over the course of many of your lives, many of you are older, but those of you who are just starting out, you will be tested in ways that you cannot imagine. But if you claim your confidence and you believe enough in yourself to know that you can get through it, and you are scaffolded by people who support you and love you, there is nothing you cannot handle. So I hope you hear this story and it sticks with you like glue. The next time you're going through something hard, I hope you remember it. And you remember that no matter what happens to you in your life, you can claim your confidence and you will be fine. Thank you all so much. I am happy to open this up for questions and answers if you have any. If not, I will create them for myself because, as I said, I'm a charity auctioneer, so I'm used to doing it all. I can also take questions online. But thank you all for being here and for listening. And thank you to Caroline and Amy for putting this together in the first place. I grew up in Louisiana, as I said. That was the answer to the first question. Yes. I noticed your pink sweatpants. I like them very much. Mm-hmm. First of all, I love that question. I love being from the South in many ways. I think there are a lot of things that I have had to unlearn also being from the South, if that makes sense. One of the things that I was not taught growing up in Louisiana was that I should go after a huge career. And it wasn't always that people said, like, don't go to work or don't work. It was more like I was working and people would say things like, well, certainly you won't do that after you have children. I was like, well, I'm not even dating anyone, so I think I have some time, right? So things like that I feel like were very cultural, and what I was expected to do were things that I had to unlearn over time. But I do really love some of the things that I learned, like tell me that you would not wear this in Kentucky. Am I right? Yeah, totally. So people in New York are always like, why are you wearing all those colors? I'm like, I don't know. It's just something about being from the South. I don't get mocked as openly down there wearing bright colors as I do up here. No, I think part of who we all are is shaped by where we grow up and the lessons that we learn. As we become adults, it's up to us to drop the lessons that we disagree with and find our own voice and move forward. So for a long time, as I said, I grew up in a small town in Louisiana, and I was ashamed that I didn't grow up in New Orleans, because that's where everyone from Louisiana, if you're not from Louisiana, people will say immediately, they're like, oh, you're from Louisiana? I love New Orleans. And I would say, I love New Orleans too, which is that's a lie, basically, because I'm not from New Orleans, but I wanted everyone to think that I was. But I think you have to claim that part of yourself and really hold on to it and realize that there's something special that makes you special no matter where you're from. And being from Kentucky is an amazing thing. Over the course of your life, you will be lucky to have been from there, because there will be things that you know that no one else does because of where you started. So embrace it, and don't ever be ashamed for where you come from, ever. Anyone in this crowd, not just those people from Kentucky. Yes, and look, you've already found a fan from Kentucky up here. It's amazing. And that is also Network or Die, so you guys should meet afterwards and be friends, and that's the way that works. Yes, sir.
Lydia, what role does faith and spirituality play in your healing and your wholeness?
It plays a huge role. So I grew up, as I said, in the South. We were a big church-growing family when I was little. I don't go to church every Sunday the way that I did, but I certainly sought out that chaplain in the hospital especially. I pray. I believe in something higher. I believe in God. And I think especially when you go through something like I went through, it's really nice to know that there is someone out there looking out for you, if that's what you believe. So I believe, in whatever faith you want to believe in, whatever religion, but I do believe in God, and I believe that there is someone up there making sure that we're living our best lives as our best selves. I've never been asked that question, by the way. I like that. Are you from the South? South of Manhattan. Well, there's a different South everywhere we go. Yes.
What's your greatest weakness, and how do you navigate around that?
Well, I'm not going to tell you because I don't believe I have any weaknesses. What's my greatest weakness? Well, I do hate an Excel spreadsheet. I'll tell you that. Don't ever ask me to put anything in a mailing list because you will never receive it. My greatest weakness, actually, I will say, is my positivity sometimes, because it almost doesn't allow me to see things that sometimes I think I should see, but I also don't care. Because I'd rather just see the good. I feel like, even when you do something like put a book out there, with a friend group in particular, it's interesting because there are people who are really supportive, and then there are people who are not as supportive because it, for them, is painful because maybe they wanted to write a book or something like that. And so I feel like it's very easy for people to be negative about things that aren't working for them. So when I go to a place where I'm being negative, I'm like, why am I being negative? It's probably because it's something that I want that I'm not doing. So I need to think about that and not so much about what that person's doing or what that person's achieving. All right. Yes. I love your orange. Thank you for wearing that to my orange-colored book signing. I appreciate you.
The book.
Oh, yeah, I know. We'll take a picture later. Don't worry.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. It's wonderful. I wanted to ask if there was such a thing as false confidence, or in other words, I love positivity, but sometimes life, maybe you go down a path and you're not sure. How do you know when to continue, be confident, and when to go, maybe this isn't the path?
I think one part of being confident is also being okay to walk away and to fail all the time. It's one of the things that, especially in the past sort of 5 or 6 years, I've realized. I was full-time with a company until last January, and now I have my own company and they're a client of mine. And it's been the most amazing thing because I just try as many things as possible. To me, it's a numbers game. Business and life is a numbers game. If you're good at something, try as many things as you can. Things that fall by the wayside, let them go and just accelerate into everything else. I don't think that you can ever not do something or do something and have it not work out, and you can't look back and be like, oh, I know why that didn't work out, and I know why I learned that, and how can I apply that to something else? So I hate it when people are like, failure is the greatest tool, but it kind of is a great tool, and it also teaches you to be more confident because you realize you're not going to die. Also, one other thing I want to say to all the college students out there. If you're sending an email and you're like worried about sending the email, it's an email. Just press send. It's not that deep. You know, I can't tell you how many times in my first book, I was sending all these emails out for case studies, asking people to be in the book. And I remember sending the first one out and be like, everyone's going to want to be in this book. It's called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room is You. Everybody's going to want to be in this book. Not the case. I sent out the emails and people would come back. And I remember the first time I was like, my whole hand was shaking. I was sending it to this like amazing anchor who I absolutely adored. And I remember like my finger was literally shaking. And I was like, oh. And I was like, just press the button. Like, what's the big deal? People are people. Press the button. It's not the big deal. Yes.
Hi. We have a question from Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Any tips for naturally negative people, or how to find that inner positive voice?
Okay, I have an exercise for everyone and on Zoom. One of my old bosses, Lauren Short, who you will remember, said this to me once, and I've never forgotten it. I was in my early 20s, and I had a lot to say about a lot of people. Big workplace mistake, by the way. Like, keep your mouth shut. I just had so many things that I wanted to share about all the people I worked with, and they weren't always nice. Let's be very clear about that. And I remember walking to her office one day, and I was like, well, Kelly did this, and then Lisa did that. And I mean, it just stirring the pot, like just not the person you should be in an office. Like, don't ever be this person. And she said very kindly, you know, Lydia, I like to say that if you get into an argument over the course of the day, it's 50-50 as to who is right and wrong. If you get into two, you should probably look in a mirror. I know. And I was like, well, I've gotten into 9 arguments today, so I guess I might be the problem. So I wrote in The Power of Positivity, I have this moment, and I want you guys to read the book, so I'm not going to tell you all the stories, but I had this moment where something very similar happened to me, where things just kept going wrong. All these things kept going wrong in one day. It was like 6 things in a row. And the final thing is me sliding across the subway platform on my hands and knees in the sleet, because I've been running, which you're not supposed to do. And I was so angry because like this had gone wrong and the world was conspiring against me. And it was like the whole world was against me. Of course not. These were individual things that had happened over the course of the day. None of them were correlated. And at the end of the day, I'm healthy. I have 3 healthy children. I am going to a job that I love. And yes, I ran and I'm going to be a little bit late, but everyone will think this is a funny story. Like, get some perspective on life. And so I've realized that I can apply that same rule whenever I'm having a negative day, whenever I'm feeling naturally negative. And by the way, I'm not like Mary Sunshine 24/7, trust me, call my kids. But when I'm getting into an argument with all 3 of my children, sometimes I will be like, there are 3 of them and 1 of me. So who's the person who's not doing something right now? It's usually me. I'm in a bad mood. It starts to spiral. All of a sudden they're reacting to that. So if you are naturally negative, think about that every once in a while. If bad things are happening to you time and time again, it's probably not that. It's probably that you just need to start separating these things out and thinking about how you, as a naturally negative person, can look at them differently. And the other thing I will say about positivity, one easy way to look about being positive is it's not about you. This world is not about you. Positivity is infectious. People are drawn to positive people. And if you don't believe me, go into a Starbucks where everybody stands like this, hitting their button because they're so angry that their 9-thing latte is not done in 2.5 minutes, and they've only been in the store for like literally 1 minute. And the barista's trying to get everything done because the barista's like the hardest working person in the world. And everybody's like literally scowling at them as they grab their drink. Do this. Look them straight in the eye and be like, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. Watch their face change and then watch what they do to the next person. They are in a better mood because you put them in a better mood. You can do that exercise anytime you want. I do it to myself in line, like in long lines, when I'm just like, come on, like grocery store, this is killing me. Just try it. That is the power of positivity. So if you're a naturally negative person, think outside of yourself. Go outward instead of inward. Yes. Someone is having so much fun outside, but they don't realize how much fun we're having in here.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. So I just recently graduated from Barnard this past December.
Well done, you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Round of applause. What is your name?
Thank you. And I just started my first corporate job this past month, also in sales.
Great.
And I am probably the youngest person on my team, and everyone is at least a decade older or just more tenured in the company. So I'm wondering if you could talk more about how you do claim that confidence in that agency while being the youngest person in the room.
Yeah, so one thing I will say about being the youngest person in the room and having been a professional intern for a couple of years, everybody loves somebody who's eager to learn, right? So be eager to learn from the people who are older than you, and they will envelop you into their life. I mean, I can use my intern, Caroline, who runs a team at Goldman Sachs now, but when I met her, the reason I loved Caroline so much is because Caroline was 10 steps ahead of me. I'll give you an example. I still remember this. It's been 20 years. I know you guys are shocked by my age, but anyway. I had a BlackBerry. Are you guys familiar with what that is? Okay, so I had a BlackBerry, and I never remember to charge. Even to this day, I never remember to charge anything. And I was running the events team that Caroline was working on. And I literally was like, where is my BlackBerry? Where's my BlackBerry? Running around looking for my BlackBerry. And Caroline appears outside of my door. Are you looking for your BlackBerry? I am, Caroline. And she said, I noticed that it was low on charge, so I plugged it in. I still remember that story. That was Caroline, my intern. She was always ahead of everything, doing everything for me and with me. And that is why we are so close to this day. That was how I was taught to work with the people who worked on my team. And I just worked with them like colleagues from the minute they walked in the door. So as the youngest person on the team, nobody cares your age. That is an imposter syndrome thing, right? You're like, I am young. What they care about is the work quality, and then you show up ready to go. Because people love a learner. They really do. They love to teach. And by the way, they want to learn from you too. So the next time someone's like, how do I do a story on Instagram? Like, show them. It's painful. I have parents. I understand that. But do it, because it's reciprocal. And again, workplaces are supposed to be amazing. I mean, some of my best friends are people I worked with over the years. So, and congratulations on graduating. Yeah. Yes. I love your stripes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing your story. I feel very powerful because I feel I can connect with you, especially when you talk about some story about when you are very scared at the first time and then you build your confidence. Yeah. So my background, so I grew up in China. I came to US in 2011 alone. So I'm the only person in Ohio. I don't know anyone, so the culture different, language different. It's very tough. So I still remember in my sophomore year, I got an intern in Ohio. So I say, okay, in the evening, I want to do some networking to know more about people. So I drive to the downtown Columbus, Ohio, and then after I finished my parking, I went there. Everybody's talking and they are very exciting. I don't know, okay, how to say hi. I standing there, I was like, okay, I don't know what to say. I'm different with other people. There's no any Asian, and I feel like I'm very different with other people. Yeah. Then I just want to run. I just want to leave. But at that time, I'm thinking about, okay, wait a second. I have already paid for my parking fee. I need to talk with someone.
Can't run out of the parking fee.
Yeah, maybe 3 people or 5 people. Then I can go back home. So then I start to say, just smile and just shake my hand, say, hey, this is Yasi, nice to meet you, and start my conversation. So I can still remember those moments that I'm scared, I don't have any confidence until right now. I organize a lot of events. I'm a VP of marketing about a women empowerment organization. I spoke at Harvard University Education Conference, and I tried a lot of different things, changed myself, came to New York. So I am very proud of myself.
Yeah, you should be. You should be.
Thank you.
And also, by the way, public speaking is people's greatest fear, and you just grabbed a microphone. So right there, you've already beat half of the people here.
Yeah, thank you. So, but I have 2 questions. Yeah. So first question is, I think some part of me is very confident. I want to do something, I want to change something, and I just do it. But some part of me, I'm still a little bit afraid, maybe speak up. I'm not sure it's because like my culture, like Asian culture, we want to make sure everything's perfect until I say something. Or maybe I'm female, so sometimes I still a little bit like step back. Should I say this? Maybe I can share my opinion later. So I don't speak up that often. But I want to change. I want to have more confidence, more assertive, and become a better myself. So do you have any suggestion, like how could I change my mindset? Like sometimes confident, sometimes it's not that confident.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all face that, if that makes you feel any better. I think that there are always moments where we walk in and we're like, oh, I don't feel like saying it. You have to push through it and you have to keep practicing. You know, I go back to public speaking a lot. People are scared of public speaking. They always ask, like, how do I get better? Keep doing it. Keep taking the microphone. Even when you don't want to, when you feel that adrenaline rush, pick up the microphone, put your hand up, give a speech. So I would say the same thing. Like when you start to feel that feeling, push yourself through it. Make yourself ask the question, because the more you do it, the easier you get. And then you realize a lot of it is in your head. You know, I say in the book, like a lot of things about imposter syndrome. People walk into conference rooms, they're like, I don't belong here. Everyone's looking at me thinking I shouldn't be here. I'm like, people are literally looking around being like, what time is lunch? They're not thinking about you. People really don't think about that. They don't really think about other people that much. So just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, again, the fact that you picked up a microphone and just spoke right now says a lot about your confidence as a person. So you should be proud of that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And another question is about, I'm just curious, do you have any fear right now, and how do you face it and change your mindset or action?
Yeah, I do have fears about things. I mean, it's interesting to put out a book. I mean, I literally sent out an email to 200 people yesterday. I had a book signing. I was like, hey guys, I had a book signing in San Francisco where one person came. So if you guys could really just show up, that would be great. Well, a lot of my friends are out of town and a lot of them didn't come, but that's just the nature of it. So I go to speeches like that. I go to speeches like this. I hope people show up. So yes, that is a fear, but I still do it because I want to be here. And even if 2 people show up, I would still have given the same speech tonight, and hopefully they would walk away feeling like they learned at least one thing, as I said. So I think you just have to push through those fears over the course of your life and keep going, because you're only going to get more fearful things the more you do. But that's exciting, right? Because it means you're trying things. Yeah.
We have one more question.
Oh no. I'll stay and do a book signing so we can all hang out, obviously.
Sorry, I'll do half a question if anybody else has another. Thank you so much. I graduated 15 years ago, and I thought I was going to be on top of the world because, you know, got into Barnard and graduated. Yeah. And then I realized it was 2008. So
it's a tough year.
Yeah, and a lot of things went like not the way I hoped or expected. After, you know, being a strong, confident Barnard woman. And I find myself now as like a single mom, and I came back to reclaim parts of myself from, you know, who am I really? I came back to campus a few weeks ago, and I thought, you know, if I can tell one thing to myself from who I was, I felt like part of my soul was still here. What would I tell her? And I was like, confidence. And I was like, okay, but how would I have learned that then? How am I going to learn it now? And then I get a thing in my inbox in Butler Library saying, claim your confidence.
And here you are.
Yes. So thank you so much for being that special guardian messenger, like Barnard's sister. And something really struck a chord of that you said about, like, if you really want to write a book. I really wanted to write when I was at Barnard. And that pen is a security blanket for me. And it seems like you're also a very busy, strong, confident Barnard woman. So
I actually did not go to Barnard, but I wish I had gone to Barnard. But I will pretend for everyone on Zoom and everyone here that I am a strong Barnard woman. I believe I embody the Barnard spirit as a woman. So yes.
So logistically, how do you do it? Like, when do you write? When do you find that time for yourself? How do you push through if you don't have inspiration, or what, like putting it all together? And with 3 kids, like, I mean, God bless you. When do you do it?
First and foremost, like, don't ever compare yourself. Comparison is the thief of joy. So like, don't even look at what I'm doing in my life and be like, why is she doing that? Because we're on 2 totally different paths. Like, that is the truth. So what I have found with both of my books is that writing for me is a discipline. It's too overwhelming to write a book. So I had to break it down into the amount of time that I had to write it, which was, this is my publisher, Jen. This was Jen is the publisher. So you can talk to her later. I'll just tell you then, just come network with her later. But the point is that for me, it was about how long do I have to write this? Divide that by the number of words I have to write a day in order to hit that deadline. So for my first book, I had a very short timeline. I wrote 1,000 words a day. I'd written 10,000 words for my beginning chapter and the second chapter that I'd submitted. And then it was 1,000 words a day for 60 straight days. And the rule that I made with myself was that I would start writing in the morning, usually on the subway on my phone. And I would write and write and write and write. And if there was any time during the day at work that I could like do it again, I would jump back on, I would forward it to myself. And that was literally what I would do. And I was not allowed to go to sleep until I had written 1,000 words. And some days I would be on fire. It would be like 1,500 words, no problem. Some days it was 2,000. Some days I would be like, this is horrible. Like no one will ever read this book. They are going to burn this manuscript in the trash. Oh my God. But I finished after I did 60,000 words in 60 days and I added them and I cried. I was on a flight. I was sobbing. The man next to me was like, are you okay? I'm like, I don't think I'm okay. I don't think I'm okay. My second book, I had twice as long. So I did 500 words a day. And I almost wish that I had less time because I would have done 1,000 words a day and it would have been done faster. But whatever that looks like for you, whether it's I'm going to write a chapter in a week or I'm going to write a chapter in a month, just start doing it every day, like a little bit every day. And don't let yourself think about writing a book. That's overwhelming. Writing 500 words is not. That's like half an hour, 45 minutes. And just write what comes and find your angle about what you want to write about. And then you can talk to Jen about the rest of it. It'll be great. And then like next year you'll be up here speaking and we'll be applauding because we'll be watching this all go down. It'll be great. Oh, Jen has to. She's the publisher of my book. I have to take this question. I did not. It was due December of 2021 and I sent it December 31st of 2021. Yeah.
And how hard you work.
Yeah.
It's showing up.
Yeah.
And you just do the work.
Yeah.
To see now, it's seeing efforts, right? You're just a star.
No way.
But no, you do the work.
Yeah.
And this, so I was class with 91.
Wait, Jen, take the microphone.
Jen
is a Barnard.
So I was class of 91. When I graduated from my high school, I was a straight A student. I was like probably fifth in my class. I got to Barnard. My first course, Professor Celeste Skank was her name. My first paper, I got a B. I cried. I went back to my dorm room. I said, I'm not going to make it. I'm a straight A student. Everyone here is smarter than I am. I didn't go to a prep school. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. And I went to her office hours and I brought the paper and I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. And she said, do you want to know why I gave you a B? And I said, yes. She said, because I don't know what you think about this book. She says, I don't know your opinion. I want to know what you think. And I said, but who am I to say what Shakespeare did or whatever the paper was on? She said, you're Jen. You're Jen. That moment with that professor helped me become a woman who, for a living, every day I say, I don't like that. I like that. That needs work. That's terrible. That's going to win. That's what I do for a living. And every woman who just took the microphone, you are going to be a success. I'm telling you, you have star power. Your face, your smile, you took the microphone. You, writer, talk to me. I will help you with agents. The connection, the networking, this place is so special. Take advantage of it. And then like Lydia says, just keep making those connections. But you're absolutely, I just wanted to underscore, it is hard work. It is hard work. Oh, Yeah, and I would say 95% of the writers I work with do not make their deadlines.
Thank you guys so much. Enjoy. I'm going to sign books. Come hang out. Drink heavily. There seems to be a lot of wine here and a lot of cheese and grapes. And I'm sorry if you're over Zoom, but thank you for joining us. And I hope to meet you one day too. You guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Lydia. Amazing. Appreciate it so much. And we're all excited to see you on April 24th at the gala. So everyone, please join us. And please enjoy beverages. And Lydia is signing books in the back. Thank you all.